Dr. Dayan Jayatilleka needs no introduction. However, you will know him as a journalist, commentator, perhaps a political critic and commentator, and a politician as well, ambassador, diplomat, you name it, he's done it. Now, a warm welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Rohan.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on board on this program.
Glad to be here.
It's Ideal Island, Connect with Rohan. We are joining, program is being recorded from Colombo today, from Nebula Studios in Colombo. Dayan, I wasn't going to talk about what you have done in the past, your achievements and so on from a professional standpoint.
Okay.
I want to ask, who are you? Can we start from the start? I'm getting my English wrong as well, but let's start from the start.
Right.
Where were you born? Do you want to tell our viewers? Because most of our viewers know who you are. So it's no point talking about the topics that you are fully conversant.
You mean they know about my reputation one way or the other?
Well, perhaps you they do. But let's go back, because the idea of some of my programs is to get that professional knowledge as well as the people behind that. So that's the context that I'm talking to you today about and from. So that's why I asked a slightly rude question, who are you?
No, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah. So the floor is yours. Perhaps you can start from where you were born, parents, schools, and all of that. So I'll interject you once you're on your free flow.
Well, let me start at the difficult end of your question, which is who are you? Meaning what kind of person, what kind of creature are you?
Sure.
That's always the toughest one, which philosophy tells us that we should really grapple with. It's to do with self-identity. I see myself as somebody who is very interested in and whose life has possibly been governed by ideas and an effort to put those ideas into practice. So that's who I am in common parlance. That's known as a public intellectual. I mean, that's the term that's usually used for such people, and including for myself. So if I want to be very grand about it, I would say I'm an intellectual who tries to put his ideas into practice. An intellectual defined as someone whose life is governed by ideas rather than other factors. Okay, so that's that can be unpacked, it can be questioned. I mean, people may laugh, but I thought I'll dive in at the deep end.
That's a good start from the deep end.
Yeah.
Let's go backwards then.
Okay, going backwards, you asked me where I was born. I was born in Colombo at the Suleiman Hospital, I'm told.
Yes.
My father was Mervyn De Silva, who became one of Sri Lanka's best known, possibly even the best known journalist and editor. But at the time I was born, he was a young journalist. I think he was 29, or he was in his 20s. And my mother was Lakshmi Sylvia De Silva, earlier Lakshmi Sylvia Fernando. My father worked at Lake House at that time. I was born in 1956, December.
So that was when D.R. Vijayawardena was in command?
Yes. And SWRD Bananayaka had just been elected in September.
The landslide.
The landslide, 56. So I'm literally a child of 56.
Right.
Which is a term that was coined by my father in an article to a British journal, the South Asian Review, in 1972. Children of 56. He wasn't talking about me, he was talking about the JVP. But I was literally a child of 1956 because I was born in December 56, and my mother was teaching at St. Bridget's Convent. She had taught Sunetra and Chandrika and so on and so forth. I remember Chandrika Bananayaka telling me that my mother was firm but fair as a teacher. With me, she was very strict, but anyway. So I'm an only child. I was their only child. That's the beginning. That's the opening.
And where did you school?
I schooled at St. Joseph's College. My father was a royalist. I was the only Josephine in the family, yes, only Josephine in the family until much later when some younger cousins from my mother's side went to St. Joseph's. But my father was a royalist, my uncles were either royalists or Thomians. On my father's side, my grandfather was a Trinitarian and so on. But I went to St. Joseph's. There was not a debate between my parents, but a discussion. And though my father was a royalist, I mean, Amma took me to St. Thomas's. The principal, the famous Mr. Perimpanagam, interviewed me. And then the no less famous principal of Royal College, Mr. H.L.D. Sugatapala, in whose honor the Navaranga Theatre has been named.
Yes.
He used to come home because they were friends of my parents, he and his wife, and they wanted me at Royal, but somehow my parents decided that I would go to St. Joseph's, probably because my mother was a Catholic. And St. Joseph's is where I went until I finished my O-levels, and I was getting a little restless. I thought I'd go to Aquinas, which was a university college.
Sure.
I was probably the youngest student for a long while there. When I entered Aquinas, I was 16 plus.
Oh, right. Very young.
And Aquinas had A-levels and the first year in the university, first in laws and so on.
First in laws and so on, yeah.
So I went to Aquinas. And after that, much to my mother's chagrin, though I was selected at the very competitive A-levels for the faculty of law in Colombo, because when you're selected either for medicine in science or law in arts, your name is already, they let you know that you have been selected.
I see.
But I went to the Senate and said, no, I want to study political science. My preference is to study political science, and after a bit of an argument with the head at that time, Professor Kamal Karunanayake, I went to Peradeniya to study political science, where I did an honors degree in political science. I got the best results in a couple of decades.
I see.
Yeah.
That's very good.
The C.L. Wickramasinghe Prize, that is the prize instituted by Bishop Lakshman Wickramasinghe, Ranil Wickramasinghe's uncle, in honor of Ranil's grandfather, that is Bishop Lakshman's father.
Yeah.
So I won that prize that year. So that's after that, of course, is postgraduate studies.
Sure.
So Fulbright and so on and so forth. But, your viewers are probably bored.
No. It's very interesting to know the background rather than just say St. Joseph's, because you mentioned the interviews you had with St. Thomas's, Royal, and then how you ended up at St. Joseph's, then Aquinas, then having been selected to do law at the Faculty of Law in Colombo, you went for political science at Peradeniya.
Yes.
I caught you saying ideas, practical ideas. As soon as you said that, in my mind, with your background, I thought ideology.
Ideology, yes. Theory, ideology.
Yeah. So which came first? Your ideas came before you went to university?
Oh, yes.
I see. Right.
Oh, yes.
Because a lot of people, young people, their ideologies are developed or molded once they're in university. But you had this background. Was it sort of a family oriented, or was it the social culture at that time to sort of come up with such ideas like, I'm going to say equality and all of that sort of stuff, which we take as granted today? But we were transitioning from an imperial 1948 post-colonial administration, 1956 Apayandu, the Janata, the People's victory of the latest W.R.D. Bandaranaike and all of that. So where did those ideas start, germinate, gestate, whatever the right word is, in your mind?
Well, my answer to that question would split the question into two. In this sense, why ideas? I mean, why not something else?
Sure.
Or some
music, something else.
Some activity or something. And then, why those ideas?
Okay.
Now, in terms of why ideas, I would definitely say it was my family background. primarily my father and mother. As I said, Tata was born in 29. He wasn't even, he was 30 when Mr. Bananaike was killed.
Right.
So he was in his late 20s. When, and this story has been written up not by me, but by him and others who, after he died. One of his senior university batchmates, Nimal Karunatilaka, who was the first to win in 56, that was the first result that came in Matale.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the Communist Party ticket, I think.
Yes, I think he was. And
I'm not, he was a communist, but on the MEP ticket.
On the MEP ticket.
Yeah. So, Nimal Karunatilaka took him to see Mr. Bananaike. This was in 56 itself.
Right.
Right? And Tata was, at that time, he was a parliamentary correspondent, the lobby correspondent, but his background was not politics. His background was English literature.
I see.
So at Royal, in the main hall, I went there once for some lecture that he was giving, and then I saw his name engraved in one of these marble tablets they have. And all his prizes were for English literature, including the E.W. Javardhan Prize, which was in honor of Mr. Javardhan's father, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and Tata edited the Royal College Journal and so on. So his background was literature, cinema. He did English Lit at university. He was the first batch to go to Pera, but they made the transition from Colombo University to Pera then. So, Mr. Bananaike knew of him because he was a lobby correspondent. But he said, young man, the foreign affairs broadcast on Radio Ceylon is conducted by an Englishman, which is not the way it should be.
Yeah.
I want you to do the broadcast because I've heard your poetry broadcast. My father used to already be a broadcaster as well as a print journalist.
Right.
And he broadcasted on literature. He had a program called From My Bookshelf and so on. I want you to take that job. And my father said, sir, I don't know anything about international relations. This is interesting because my father, by the time, later in his career, he was known as Sri Lanka's foremost authority on international relations. That was because of Mr. Bananaike. And Mr. Bananaike said, nonsense, come along with me, and taken him along to his library and given him an armful of books. And said, you read those. So my father, he kicked out the poor Englishman from
Radio
Ceylon, gave it to my 20-something-year-old father, who for the rest of his life was immersed not only in journalism, which he primarily was, professionally he was a journalist and an editor, but his field of specialization was international affairs.
I see.
Now, that I think was my entry into the world of ideas, because he was not only an international affairs commentator, but as a journalist, because of his English lit background, he spoke so well and he wrote so well, that he was for a long time the Sri Lankan, the Colombo correspondent of the BBC, of the Economist, London, the Journal, of the Financial Times, and for a while the Sunday Times, London.
I see. London, right.
So many foreign journalists, very big names, people who later became editors. Now, I had, as a boy, I had met people like Martin Woolacott, who later became the editor of The Guardian. When they passed through Sri Lanka, and most of them passed through Sri Lanka on the way to cover the Vietnam War.
I see, right.
My father was their host. Now, that was in Colombo. But my father and mother also traveled very much by invitation. So, they didn't take me everywhere they went, but they made a decision that instead of saving money for the boys' future education, my father told me very clearly, look, if you're good enough, you'll get a scholarship. Right? No, I'm not going to be funding your education. But he used the money to buy an extra ticket because my parents were guests of government, or because as he was moving up in journalism, he was the guest of whatever government of the country that we were going to. So I have photographs at home of him, not yet an editor, but in conversation with, let's say, the Israeli Foreign Minister Abba Eban. And then, he interviewed the Japanese Prime Minister Isako Sato and so on. So, because of all of this, I was moving in a realm where ideas, mainly political ideas, were being discussed. I was also at certain very important places in the world at very important times.
Yes.
We were in Jakarta, in Indonesia in 1965.
Was it Sukarno?
Just before the coup. Because Sukarno, actually his Foreign Minister Subandrio had personally invited my parents, and they took me along for the 10th anniversary of the Bandung conference.
I see.
Bandung was 55.
Yeah.
This was 65.
Just talk to the camera about the Bandung conference.
Yeah, the Bandung conference was the Afro-Asian conference. For the first time, the leaders of the decolonized Afro-Asian countries gathered in Bandung, Indonesia. It was a historic national renaissance. And unfortunately, the Sri Lankan representative, Sir John Kotalawala, was out of step. But the Bandung spirit was reflected 1 year later when SWRD Bandanayake, who represented that same rising Afro-Asian nationalism, won the election in 56. So we were there in Indonesia for the 10th anniversary. And my father was the last foreign journalist to interview the leader of the Indonesian Communist Party, Dayan Idit. And this was in the last few weeks of that year, which was immortalized in this book and movie called The Year of Living Dangerously. And I was a boy, an 8-year-old boy at that time. But before that, 1 year before, at the age of 7, I was at the second, on the sidelines,
Sure.
But of the
you were there.
second non-aligned conference in Cairo, when Nasser was the leader of Egypt.
Gamal Abdel Nasser.
Yes. Yeah. So I was accompanying my parents. This was 1964, September, I think.
So who was the Prime Minister of Ceylon at that time?
Madam Bandanayake.
Madam Bandanayake, yeah.
So the pool or the environment in which I was operating was one rich with ideas. Now, my own choice of ideas, that's why I said I sliced the question into two, why ideas and which ideas. I would say that there are two. I had absorbed much from being present at conversations, reading the foreign newspapers. Tata got all the foreign newspapers at home anyway, and I used to read them. Those ideas were of a progressive sort, non-alignment, but also I was in Europe, including Britain, in 1968, the year of the famous student uprisings in the West.
Yes.
And Tata came back and wrote in the Observer, a series on youth in revolt in 1968. So I was also influenced by that. I was not yet even a teenager. I would have been 12. But 68 was the year of revolution, as it were, in the West. And a lot of ideas, names of philosophers, students of famous Western philosophers were in debates. I remember attending, in some dim, smoky, cigarette smoke-filled cellars in Berlin.
Yeah, cigar
discussions, and Che Guevara was the
hero.
main symbol. So the ideas I was most influenced by, the ideas that resonated most with me, were ideas to the left of my parents, especially my father. My father was center-left or left of center. I went one step further, probably a generational thing, or maybe it was some psychological desire to follow the path of those figures who my father was writing about. For instance, when Che Guevara died and sometime later his diaries came out, there was a full-page article written by my father in the Observer about Che. So I read that. But I wanted to, not probably very consciously, but I wanted to go one step further.
So am I right if I say you were left of the left?
Left of center.
Yes.
And now this led to an interesting event or occurrence at St. Joseph's, which, as you might imagine, I mean, you know what the Colombo schools are like. So one day, my mother was given a call by Father Rector, who wanted her to come and drop in and see.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they respected her a lot because she had taken retirement as after her stint at St. Bridget's. I don't think she should have retired, but she thought she had to parent me full time, and also with my father's travels. And
sure.
So anyhow, I think she may have gone with some trepidation because there was no reason to be summoned by the rector, since I was sort of coming first in class every time, as it were. And I was reading out the Gospels. I was picked by the rector to read out at Mass or
you were there
at the chapel.
Yeah.
So I must have, well, still pre-teens, or may have just entered my teens. And Father Rector said, Lakshmi, we had this open essay competition, and as you know, we don't give the topic until everybody is assembled in this big hall. And Dayan won it, and we are going to award him the prize this year. But I just wanted to let you know what the topic was and what he chose to write about.
So that intrigued him.
Yes. Yeah. So she had said yes. So the topic was the person who has influenced me most. And of course, people wrote about their fathers or their mothers. Some people wrote about their grandparents.
Sure.
Some wrote about Jesus. Dayan wrote about Che Guevara.
I was just going to second guess, but yeah.
This was grade 8.
So that must have been a worrying thing for the Father Rector.
This was for Father W.L.A. Don Peter. He later became Monsignor, the senior in the church. He was also my rector at Aquinas, because he had moved on by the time I went to Aquinas. So he wanted very discreetly. He was telling my mother, you'd better keep an eye on this chap.
Danger signs.
Because this is what he wrote, and of course it was a brilliant essay, so, we have no choice, he won it.
Yeah, recognize the talent there.
I had also won the all-island religious essay, which with the visiting Pope Paul VI had instituted in his name. So, I knew my gospel very well, but I was what would later be called, I didn't know the term at the time, sort of more liberation theology oriented as a Christian or Catholic. So the ideas were not a download of the ideas of my parents, but they were definitely a progression of the environment, the intellectual environment, and the cultural environment in which I grew up.
So it's quite the conclusion I get from what you just mentioned is that exposure outside of the family circles, the national circles, the world is your oyster, as they say, from a very young age, this is a message out to young Sri Lankans and also parents, to open your children to the world at large. Of course, we are in a different time now with social media at on your phone, AI and all of that. So they don't need to reinvent the wheel. But I think in comparison to Dayan, somebody who, well, perhaps myself, I had that overseas exposure much later in life. So for me, the world was Sri Lanka. And when you're in Sri Lanka, where we are today, it's a huge place. But once you get out, you see things in a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the important takeaway from there. Open your eyes, mind, sound, everything, and see where we are and where you want to be.
And read.
And read.
Tata had a big library. And I got into the reading habit very early. So I was interested in ideas not only as theory, but also, as I said, the putting into practice of ideas in real history. I would say reading was a very important part of my upbringing, my growing up. I mean,
so studying Che Guevara and coming first at St. Joseph's, writing about him, the essays, and then you went to Peradeniya, the university, political science. Did you meet people of similar thought processes, minds?
Oh yes, because university in Sri Lanka is an interesting place. In the first place, it's difficult to get into university because it's very competitive.
Yeah.
So only a fraction make it there. So everybody who comes there are young people who are within your age span. For instance, the very well-known and respected Commission of Elections, the former one, Mahinda Deshapriya, was in the final year when I was in the first year. But we were friends because we did politics together.
Talk about that politics that I call.
Yeah, well, by the time I went to university, I was already politically involved as an A-level student.
Yeah.
And just to make it very clear that, I'm not inventing a story, Professor Rohan Samarajiva, who's very well known, Rohan and I belong to the same radical left group called Miti Pahara in the 1970s. The only difference being that I was still in my A-levels and he was at Peradeniya University,
right.
So he was senior to me. He also came from a privileged background. His father was a very respected senior official in the field of education, Ainsley Samarajiva.
Yes.
And it was Mrs. Baranaka who was in office, so it was a sort of a center-left government. But we belonged to the radical left. Rohan was a senior in in the last years, and when I went to university, he was just graduating.
So were you?
I was already, as an A-level student, I was involved in and with a radical left organization. It's not that I was radicalized by going to Peradeniya.
You were there before.
I was there before. I mean, I went to Peradeniya as.
So the radical left you talk about as an A-level student and at Peradeniya, was it left of the then LSSP,
Absolutely.
the Communist Party,
Totally.
and so on? Totally.
Totally. Yeah. It was rebelling against what it saw as a conformist left.
Especially, I'm interested personally, but for the benefit of our viewers, the left at that time, left leaders at that time came from a privileged, if you can correct me on the choice of word, capitalist background, well-to-do background, I think is the more appropriate word. And then on the opposite side of that left, but on the same side, if you know what I mean, were the set of young people, we'll find the word eventually, who were not from the privileged class, but they were creating a grassroots level, a left, ultra-left movement. Did you see that at university, or were you part of it?
Yes.
Or how did that happen?
I was not part of the JVP because the JVP was in jail at that time.
Yes.
I was sort of sympathetic, but we were getting materials from inside the jails because the JVP was building in the universities at cell level. So, for instance, Mahinda Deshapriya, who was brother Sunanda Deshapriya, who's now overseas, Sunanda was in jail having participated in the uprising of April 71.
Yeah.
So we were getting materials which had been written by Vijay Veera and also critics of Vijay Veera's within the jails. All of this was coming to Peradeniya campus. And I was a member of an organization called the Social Studies Circle, Samaja Adhyana Kavya, on Peradeniya campus. Off campus, there was also under the same name, an organization which had some very interesting, brilliant, older theoreticians like Newton Gunasinghe, who had from Sussex, from IDS, died prematurely. So, what the university in Sri Lanka is a melting pot. If you choose to go to a Sri Lankan university, and if you've been good enough to get into one, you may come from, well, at that time, my parents were living down Ward Place. I'd started going to St. Joseph's from Ward Place, and I left for Peradeniya from Ward Place. So I was a Ward Place kid at that time. I no longer am. I mean, I live in Kotte. But my parents lived in Colombo 7. So anyway, wherever you come from, your comrade or your classmate could be, as was in my case, somebody who came from a Chena slash and burn cultivation in Anuradhapura, who was also, I mean, he was a brilliant guy. The guy I'm talking about was a brilliant Maoist, and he wound up the head of the research department of the central bank. I won't name names.
You wouldn't name names,
No, Karunaratne, W. Karunaratne. We call him Pol Karu, Pol for political science, because he was senior to me.
It's not coconuts, it's political science.
Political science.
Okay.
So, you know, it's a melting pot in social terms. Most of them were Sinhala speaking. I myself had made an effort and become Sinhala speaking because I was heading the debating teams at St. Joseph's. So I was good in my Sinhala by that time. Not as a small boy, but later. And yes, I mean, I plunged in, but even at that time, now Vijay Veera was released from jail after Jaya Jayawardena was made president. In 78, he came over to Peradeniya and delivered a lecture. And years later, I mean decades later, people were still talking about the very sharp polemical questions I had asked him. So I was already not of the same view.
But
I disagreed in terms of certain ideas. But those were issues of interpretation. And I was debating him. I was a first year or second year, I was a second year student.
You were in the audience.
I was in the audience. I got up and, you know, we had an exchange. And that wasn't the only time. I mean, later in Colombo, the same thing repeated itself. And, I mean, he wrote a book in 1985. He was underground at that time, and by the way, so was I. And in that book, which was supposed to be on the Tamil Elam question, he had more consecutive pages criticizing me by name than he had criticizing Velupille Prabhakaran.
Oh, really?
Yes. Because he regarded me as a competitor within the left. For the same kind of market or the same space. So I had, you know, this was there's a story, but I have to clarify, I wouldn't call myself a radical leftist anymore. I mean, in the second half of my life, I would say I was until, say I hit 30 or early 30s. And the second half of my life, I've been very much what I would call a social democrat. And today, if I'm asked, who are the politicians in the world I like most, I would definitely say those who are known as the progressive wing of the U.S. Democratic Party, like Zoran Mamdani, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and people of that sort. They're not by any means radical leftists, but they are on the left within the democratic mainstream.
So can I ask you, you were influenced at home, then the social circles, the national and international circles that you were as a part of a family,
yes,
your father and mother and yourself, that gave you that open ideas, to be open to ideas and look at the world, not just Sri Lanka. Then you developed ultra-left ideas, whatever you want to, yeah. And then you went to Peradeniya, you saw a mixing of the whole social, all of the social layers, the segments. You were on the left of the left.
Correct.
And then after you reached the age of 30 onwards, you came back, and you can use your own words, my words, from the extreme left to the center, and you are now looking at the world, the life, society from a social democratic perspective. Am I right?
Yes.
And why did that happen? Was it age or understanding things differently, or did you see things rightly or wrongly at the start? Big question. Oh.
Well, I would say history, and I don't mean ancient history, but the history of what was going on in the world and in Sri Lanka at a certain point of time. Now, very real history with a very sharp edge. Let me explain what I mean. In Sri Lanka in the 1980s, I was indicted under the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
Yes.
23 of us were indicted. Several of them are professors and so on now. But at that time we were in our 20s. I had not yet reached 30. When I turned 30, I was underground on the run. That's how the 80s were because of July 83. And those of us who are on the left divided up into two streams. One stream, to which I belonged, and not all of us were radical. Now, there was one person with whom, about whom I had written 4 cover stories to the Lanka Guardian, edited by my father. That was Vijay Kumaratunga. I really liked and admired him. He was not a radical leftist, but he was very much a leftist.
Yes.
He was a Zoran Mamdani.
Yes.
We felt in our conscience, we were stricken by what had happened to the Tamil people in July 83. And we wanted to build bridges with Tamil leftists. And there were Tamil leftists.
Yes.
EPRLF, Plot, and so on. Eros, some of them had studied in London. So that was one response from those of us who were on the Sinhalese left, but who are anti-racist, who are internationalists. And then there was the JVP, which had been unfairly banned by the Jayatilleka government. But they went at it another way. They were willing to throw anything that they could at the establishment, including taking a very hard line. Now, we were opposed to Perivagaran. We were for the Tamil leftists.
Yes.
But we were for a fair political solution, not a separate state, but the kind of autonomy you find in most civilized countries. For large minorities or minority nationalities.
I mean, Belgium is a classic case in point.
Oh, or Scotland.
England, it's
Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland.
Britain is, well, nominally or according to its unwritten constitution, a unitary state. But you have
the government
devolution.
Devolutionary powers.
So we were for devolution against the Tigers. But the JVP and Vijayveera were opposed to devolution as well. And even today, though they are not the kind of militant, they are not chauvinists, they don't say a word about devolution. And that's why you don't have provincial council elections. There is a logjam, but they don't say, no, we are for devolution. We will revive provincial devolution, but we have something that we need to untangle, and will you all help us, and we'll get this done fast. They don't say, the JVP government doesn't say what its solution to the Tamil grievances are. They even imply that there's no such thing, and it's all economic. But of course, it's not all economic.
Yeah.
It's an issue of identity. So we divided into these two streams, reacting to real history, to July 83, the shock of July 83. And we found in a few years, I found, that the JVP was killing more leftists than British colonialism ever did, or capitalism for centuries had done in Sri Lanka. Similarly, in the northeast of Sri Lanka, the tigers were murdering the Tamil leftists much more than the Sri Lankan military was killing them. In fact, there were very few, maybe one or two killed by the Navy while on crossings. But most of the Tamil Elam leftists were massacred by the tigers, just as most of us in the south who were anti-racist and for Sinhala Tamil bridge building were being killed by the JVP, starting with Vijay Kumaratunga.
Yes.
And also a young student leader called Jayatilleka. There's an inside story there, and of course all of this is on the police record. Jayatilleka, who was from the deep south, who was a far leftist, Independent Students Union of Colombo University, a student leader, he was abducted, tortured and killed by the JVP in 1986 in December on a Poya day. I say it was a Poya day. I remember that because pilgrims were passing this, and then these JVP guys who were doing the killing, having killed Patirana, had to stop. They had abducted two students, Patirana and his friend. And the friend survived with half his throat, sliced. And in his statement to the police, he said that one of the questions that the JVP killers, who were themselves university students,
fellow students,
were asking them was where I was hiding because I was underground. So it had become a bitter civil war within the radical left. Now, this was something that was happening not only in Sri Lanka. As a keen student of international politics, I was very well aware of what happened in Cambodia, where the Vietnamese had to go in and topple the Pol Pot government of the Khmer Rouge.
And they were all leftists.
And they were all leftists, and those guys had turned Cambodia into into the equivalent of Hitler's Germany in Asia. And they were leftists. Not only were they leftists, some of the leaders had studied at the Sorbonne.
Yes.
The same thing happened in other places, in Grenada, where Maurice Bishop was killed, Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, by a far leftist grouping headed by one of the ministers called Bernard Cord. So across the world, we saw left fanaticism or left fundamentalism. Just as there's a difference in any religion between sincere adherents and fundamentalists, that is true of ideas as well. So I understood something that I didn't understand because it wasn't apparent starting out as a teenager, that there were other factors. And that was one of the things that moved me to a social democratic path. Because I knew that however courageous and risk-taking you were, and however, however much you may have read, unless you have a moral compass, you can go wrong. And it's better not to start rock and roll, as it were, because you never know where it's going to wind up. Much of it depends on your cultural and civilizational background. I put all of these into two books that came out of my postgraduate studies, including my doctoral dissertation. They were published in London. One was published by Pluto Press, and the other by Paul Grave Macmillan. The one that was published by Pluto was on Fidel Castro, because I found he and of course Che Guevara, but the book was on Fidel, exceptional in their use of violence, very ethical use of violence. And the Paul Grave Macmillan book was on the collapse of global socialism, a counter-narrative from the South, because I was viewing it from the global South.
Yeah.
And I put all these ideas, these experiences, and my conclusions that you have to draw the line between good and bad. There has to be a line. And just because you're on the side of the oppressed, it doesn't mean you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I sort of, when talking about the books, I used to crack a joke, which I don't think I included in the book. But I used to say, I remain supportive of the underdog, but you have to get your underdog inoculated.
Otherwise it becomes a mad dog.
Exactly, exactly.
Interesting, because I have studied or understood the background and how you started where you were and then came onto the middle of the political spectrum. But that explains it very well, what made you change or come back or steer to the middle to be on social democracy.
Rohan, may I add something?
Of course.
It might be a little unpalatable, but I've got to say it. You know, finally I had to make a choice. When the country was facing the possibility of a JVP siege of power, and of course it was threatened by the LTT trying to carve out a separate state.
This was the 80s.
This was now I had started off in the early to mid 80s. I'd given up on I was on a Fulbright scholarship, as you know, one of the most prestigious scholarships in the world, if not the. I came back from the United States, and I was about to leave after the 1982 October presidential election, but then President Jayatilleka decided he's not going to have a parliamentary election. The referendum. So I stayed on. Of course, I traveled. I went back to the US the next year and been back, but I never went back to my PhD. I returned to my PhD 20 years later, not the same subjects, after both my parents had died, and I reassessed my life. I mean, they didn't die of an accident, but they died relatively young.
I see.
Tata was 69, and Amma was around the same age. They died within 1.5 years of one another, which happens when you've been sort of married for a long time. So I went back and did my PhD. But I had to make a choice. And I chose to support the Sri Lankan democratic state, however flawed, against the JVP and against the LTT. And I did it not only by writing about it, but as the record shows, I was very close to it. I worked very closely with President Premadasa.
Yes, yeah.
And later President Mahinda Rajapaksa. And therefore participated or played a small peripheral role in the struggle against both the JVP and the LTT in an effort to save Sri Lanka's democratic state. So I had traveled a long way from somebody who was accused, the first in the indictment under the PTA.
Yeah, that was under the
Jayawardena.
Yeah.
14 counts under the PTA. The first was conspiracy to overthrow the state through violence. But by the end of that decade of the 80s, I was defending the state.
And under the same United National Party, but different
leader. Different leader.
Yes.
Because Premadasa was a social democrat.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So I supported Premadasa and Mahinda. Mahinda was left of center, and so that was if you can call it a shift that because I understood that there are worse things than the democratic state.
Sure.
I thought that that socialism was more advanced, that the socialist project was more advanced, but then I realized there's socialism and there's socialism. And not every kind of socialism is better than every kind of capitalism. In many cases, democratic capitalism is better than professed socialism unless you're sure from the point of view of the people that socialism is going to be better. So that's why I didn't move from left to right as many have done.
Yes, yeah.
But I moved to a renovated center, which is a well-known brand, as it were, social democracy.
This is precisely the reason why I wanted to talk to you on camera, for you to explain the shift, because otherwise people who do not know the backstory would say, oh, well, these are all turncoats.
Right, he's swung from one
team.
Yeah. And everything I've written about. It's not that one morning you found me doing something else. I've written, I've debated.
Social media is much faster than a book, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The social media comment, oh, this guy was...
There'll be lots of people who will send you bouquets as well as brickbats in the comments page. But then that's social media, and one has to be open to that as well, the good and the bad and the ugly. So it's a fascinating story. Now, we are running out of time, but I'm sure people behind the screens will find us another 5 to 8 minutes. Is there anything else you want to add?
I'm just here to answer your question.
Right, okay.
But as I said, no taboos. You can ask me anything you want.
Sure.
And I will not hold back anything I say.
Yeah. So, no, I really appreciate your openness and the way we are structured this conversation. It's totally unscripted. So to complete and to conclude, we got a little bit of time from the other side of the camera. You then became, or you took on a new role as an ambassador, diplomat, and also defending Sri Lanka at the United Nations and all of that. Walk us through how that came about and the days at, defending Sri Lanka and so on.
Well, in a way, it was something I inherited because I was Mervin's son, and he, as Mr. Bradman Veerakona, one of our most distinguished civil servants, wrote in the newspapers after Mervin died. For 50 years, Mervin had been a key influential figure in the making of Sri Lanka's foreign policy. So people didn't call me and say, hey, you're Mervin's son, why don't you be ambassador? Lakshman Kadargama, I was very close to Lakshman Kadargama because Lakshman and Tata were friends, so he sort of took me under his wing. And then he was assassinated. I was teaching at Johns Hopkins SAIS as a visiting adjunct professor at that time when he was killed. And then I had been supporting Mahinda because, again, when my father died in 1999, Mahinda Rajapaksa, who was a minister in Chandrika's cabinet, wrote a beautiful piece about Mervin, which nobody could have written for him because he was talking about how he used to just listen to when his older cousins, George Rajapaksa and Lakshman Rajapaksa, were famous politicians, and Mervin were talking.
Sons of D.M. Rajapaksa.
Yeah. Sons of D.M. Mahinda was D.A.
D.A. Rajapaksa.
I forgot your Gaul, your Richmond College.
The links.
The links. So, Chamal went to Richmond, I think.
I think a lot of Rajapaksas went to Richmond initially.
Went to Richmond.
Yeah. I think D.A. Rajapaksa and D.M. Rajapaksa also went to Richmond College in Gaul.
So there we are. So Mahinda wrote about how Mervin had also mentored him because Mahinda was in the Palestine Solidarity Committee and my father was very well known as a supporter of Palestine. So Mahinda Rajapaksa reached out to me in 1999 after Tata died So I was close to Lakshman, who was with Chandrika, but also Mahinda. They were rivals at one time for the prime ministership, but I had a perfect understanding with both. I supported Mahinda because I knew that he would be a very good candidate to tackle the problem of Prabhakara, which he did. And one of the first things he did was invite me to be ambassador to Geneva. I mean, I didn't have in that sense, I didn't have a diplomatic background, but from the age of 7, I had been in a non-aligned conference and so on and so forth. So I went there and fought that battle for Sri Lanka. And I must say, on the one hand, it's gratifying, on the other hand, it's sad. It's gratifying because it was only during my tenure that Sri Lanka won a vote in the UN directed against a move that was directed against it, but we won.
I remember that very well.
And there are books written overseas, not by me, by scholars overseas who are not very sympathetic to Sri Lanka. One is a lady called Judith Large, and that book was by Z Press, I think, and another by Rachel, somebody, both British or American academics, which have chapters about
what happened,
me and, how we won that. And if you go to the index, there are about 40 references to me. So I'm very happy about that. I'm gratified that when the country needed it, I went out there and fought and won. I'm sad because we've never won since.
I see.
It's like the Cricket World Cup.
I know. I was just about to say, it's like Sri Lanka winning the World Cup in cricket.
1996, never again.
It's a one-hit wonder.
No, because the day after we won the Cricket World Cup, everybody was busy trying to dismantle the structure that won. I mean, from Anna Punjieva to Davanel Watmore, everybody was removed.
Yes, they've all taken off the system.
So that happened to me 6 weeks after we won. I was removed from Geneva.
Yes.
And we never won since. We kept losing. And when we didn't lose, we just sold out, like the co-sponsorship with the West in 2015 of a resolution, which unfortunately this JVP government seems to be picking up on. That's why we are going to have an independent public prosecutor's office.
So the co-sponsorship was under the
Mangala and Ranil.
Mangala Samaravira Ranil Wickramasinghe government.
Yeah.
I see. So
I served in 3 posts, 2 under President Mahinda Rajapaksa, 1 under President Maithripala Sirisena. So frankly, both were under SLFP administrations because of a sort of shared non-aligned thing. And I was ambassador to the UN, UN Geneva. I was also elected chairman of the ILO, the International Labour Organization.
I see.
Yeah.
So when you say elected by the member
elected
states?
by 193 countries. I was an elected vice president of the Human Rights Council. Elected.
Impressive record. Yeah.
And then I was ambassador to France, and Spain and Portugal, which I have visited, but also the permanent delegate to UNESCO. And that was when I was one of those ambassadors who helped the Palestinians get membership. Hillary Clinton came and addressed us and threatened us and said, we'll have to cut 60% of the budget. Geneva and Paris UNESCO. And in 2 members of the P5 of the UN Security Council, that's France and Russia.
And in my mind, as a twist here, you are very much an internationalist. You've spoken out in international circles for Palestine. But you have the name of Dayan.
Yes.
As opposed to the Sri Lankan name, Dayan.
Yes, I was the first Dayan in Sri Lanka, D-A-Y-A-N.
Moshe Dayan?
Yes.
There you are. So,
but actually Mario Dayan, but because of Moshe Dayan, 1956. Because he was, politics apart, he was this daring military commander, and my father was a young reporter. So,
of course,
and when I visited Israel with my parents, I had a autographed photograph from Moshe Dayan himself, but I don't know what I did with it. I supported the Palestinians 1 year after.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful discussion talking about your first-hand experiences as well as the university of life education, not necessarily a university of whatever, like in your case, Peradeniya and so on, and the US. So, fascinating conversation, Dayan. I think I have run out of questions.
Thank you for the opportunity, Ron.
Well, the pleasure is always mine to have you on board this program on Ideal Island. Hopefully our viewers across the globe, Sri Lanka as well as other countries, will watch this program and then perhaps comment as well. So thank you once again for being with us on this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Very happy to be here.